Right, right. It's had a.
Yeah, I'm hearing an echo. I'm not sure what's going on with your end. Can you ever hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, I can hear you as well. I just think that you need to take the word behind like this. Something unusual for you. It's not unusual for you.
Something unusual. Sorry, repeat it.
I said, not something unusual for you. The word God.
Oh, oh.
You're working hard for a long time now. I know what you put down. So
No,
that's
actually,
encouraging, man.
yeah, actually, I would say that this is probably taking things to a different level because we did three full tours to Kemet in the last 3 years. So, and to prepare for those, it takes a couple of months before going, and then a month during. So that on top of the publishing and everything else is has been a different level of activity in the last 20 years. So
Oh, okay. So it has exponentially increased.
yeah, I think that's exponential is a good word. So now I'm looking to kind of take a break, especially after our upcoming program.
Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about those experiences. How was it going? And did you take groups there? How large were the groups? And how did it feel? Was it well received?
Yes, very well received. The groups are smaller. There are like about 25 people, between 20 and 25 people. Actually, this last one we had like 30. Um, so that was, pretty. I would say pretty much almost like a limit. Actually, 30, 35. Actually, I think it went up to. So it's a special kind of tour that I put together that has initiatic focus, and we go through some of the main sites, but we really focus on one, which is the Temple of Asar, and then we go through a 6-day course. This is during like a 12, 13, 14-day program, initiatic course of reading the some special panels, special hieroglyphic text, and then by the beginning a person begins as a novice, and by the end they have entry into the nature and wisdom of the temple from an initiatic perspective, as if they were initiates. And so I'm working on putting that together on our Kemet University site as a course, also with a special feature of being able to do it almost as if you were going there, where you can experience. We took lots of virtual reality photos, using new technology, so people can go and visit the temple as if they were actually there on the computer or using goggles, and then they can see lectures that were done there, me demonstrating or reading the wall panels in the temple, things of that nature. So that was a pretty big project for this year.
We're talking about what's the length of time? How long was the tour? How long were you there every tour? How long did you stay?
Well, I myself stayed for about 3.5 weeks. I went before, and then we stayed a few days after for doing research purposes. And during the time of the actual tour with the group, that was about 2 weeks, or a little less than 2 weeks, like about 13 days. And so that's like I say, usually how it goes. Have to go there like at least a week before to prepare. I don't travel with the group, so I can go there to prepare and review everything that's going to be covered, and then I stay afterwards. So that's how we are organizing the program.
So when they get to the location, they stay within close proximity to the actual temple, pyramids and the temples. They stay close to that area, and whether it's on site, they somewhere near on site, or how that works.
Yeah, well, there are many hotels that people can use, but the and so we use of course, you have to use like a 4-star or higher when going. But when we go to and usually the hotels are like 10, 15 minutes away from whatever side you're going to. However, and in the main one that we go to for the course, because we do different stops, and then the long stop is where the course is given, and that one is like a walking distance to the temple in the city of Abydos, Abdu, and that's the temple of Osiris. And so we every day we would walk, to and from the temple, and we were doing it in October because it's cooler than going in the summers. So that's how we ran the course. And then we went to other. This year we added a couple of other things. We added Cairo into the mix, I guess you would say. A visit to the Sphinx enclosure and the pyramid area. So it was quite a fascinating and comprehensive trip, really.
Well, let me ask you, maybe just a position on this particular geographical location. We know that it's mainstream of Egypt, there's a lot of unrest, unsettled unrest going on, and social politically there were a lot of things going on, unstable, and it appears to be what we can based on reports that I'm looking around what's happening in Egypt. Is there any correlation to that? Do you have a connection to how to draw that together? And what kind of assessment do you get before we move from that and the mainstream of what is going on in the factionism and things that's going on in Egypt? Do you get a sense or get a chance to deal with those issues?
Yes, actually, it's interesting that you asked that because we had gone originally in the year 2000. We did 3 trips in the year 2000, and I had planned to take our group pretty much over the next 15 years, and we were always kind of stopped because of every once in a while you hear it's a major bombing or some issue going on, and especially wary of unrest. For now, let's refer to it as unrest. It's really a political issue based on world empire. That the people who run the world empire, which is basically the Western countries, they want to maintain the control, and so they sow discontent and political, social, economic discontent to keep other countries off balance or to keep them weak, and so on and so forth. And part of that is destabilizing the so-called Middle East, and that has an effect. The recent Arab Spring that occurred also played into the hands of the powers that be, and especially locally there, the military basically took over, and they're in a fight with the so-called rebels, those who have adopted militarist Islam. Let's call it. I want to call it radical for now, to try to overthrow those powers. But in any case, every once in a while the issue flares up, and we have to be wary that it doesn't flare up into attacks on tourists, because if that occurs, then that's a line. Right. But, yeah, that's a line that we'd have to say the safety issue is a strong concern, and we would not go on that basis. A lot of attacks have occurred in military bases. A lot of attacks have occurred in the Sinai area and out of the areas, or politically in Cairo. Actually, once we were there in 2015, there was a bombing in Cairo, and we were in the south of the country, and that's in the north. And we couldn't do anything at that point because we were already there. So that is a concern. However, we are feeling that the importance of the trip is worth a certain amount of risk, and also if we are honest spiritualists, it also means that we have to some degree rely on the Neteru, our gods and goddesses, to protect us. Although we're not going to go doing something stupid and then like running into in front of a speeding car on a highway and then say, oh, Jehuti, Kasimwan, protect me, or Asar, come and help me, or Asad or something. It wouldn't make sense. So.
That makes good sense. And that's part of the whole scenario there, because I was in April of this year, the pandemic was happening in churches, and it was claimed ISIS, so claimed responsibility for. There's a lot of, again, I was talking about the unrest that you just laid it out, pointed out, that, there's a lot of manipulation going on, particularly when we talk about the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was one of those quick collaborations that gave the impression that they were going to support the rebels, as you say, so-called rebels. What the real intent was for the global powers to maintain control of that region. And I'm just kind of curious or interested to know, Dr. Ashby, when you go to these sacred sites, you go into the pyramids and you go into the temples, and are those virtually kept unscathed because it is tourist revenue gain, or is it sacred for them? Are they, is that protected from any type of terrorism or bombings or desecration? So when you're in that area, do you get a sense that it's protected by the gods and goddesses of here? And how do you determine, what's happening where those areas are more sacred and kept, from all the unrest that's going on in the mainland?
Right. The on the issue of the sites. Before I get into that, I was going to add one more thing. That when we scheduled the programs, we were aware of the Christian church bombings, and we were watching the situation closely. And if we see a pattern, or we see something that is developing, we would definitely cancel the program and reschedule. So we are very cognizant, and we're very watchful, and also we have a person on the ground who we've worked with for the last 3 years, who handles the local arrangements, and his name is Adam, and we've relied on him also for issues of safety, because he has his connections and he is ear to the ground as well. And on the issue of the sites, that's another sensitive issue, because the level of destruction that the sites incurred was really devastating. However, there's so much. And probably, some estimates are even that more than 50% of what is in Kemet has not been discovered yet. Because as we hear, discovering things all the time, every year, there's a new discovery of something. And it's very possible that there are things in the desert area that have not been discovered. However, the time between the taking over of Kemet by the Arabs, which occurred 100 years after Muhammad, around the year 700 ACE. Between that time and about the year 1800, there was a period of massive destruction and razing of temples. That's like what the Taliban were doing, and the ISIS were doing in Palmyra and places in Syria and in Iraq, trying to destroy any traces of anything that is not fundamentalist Islamic. according to their idea. So in pre-Islamic days, ancient Egypt was established throughout the Middle East, and also after that, the Buddhists, or not after that, sort of during that time, the Buddhists also came in, and there were monuments, and there were many. In fact, those countries were actually Buddhist before they were Islamic. So those Buddhist monuments, they tried to blow them up and destroy them, and anything that points to Egypt or anything other than Islam. But that's not something peculiar to Islam. It's something that the Jews have tried to do, something that the Christians, the fundamentalists of those groups have also tried to do. So there's a lot of destruction. However, as I've hopefully demonstrated, it is possible to between the papyrus scripture, the wood scripture, and the stone scripture. So meaning the hieroglyphs on papyrus, the coffin texts, the temple inscriptions on stone. Between all of those, it is possible to discern a full operational teaching that is possible to use as a living spiritual tradition and philosophy and process for spiritual evolution, for human evolution. So that's what all the books are, and that's what this course is all about. That's what the trips are based on. So we don't do trips just for sightseeing or just as a tourist. It's really an initiatic process. And also, I think it's possible that my wife, my partner, Sabajat, may be working on one for 2019. So that's possible as well. Although another issue that we haven't talked about is the that may become an issue very soon is the collapse of the environment due to global warming, and that might prevent air travel. So it might be very difficult to do these kinds of things. But as of now, she's looking into that, and it's possible that she may conduct that program.
I think that's really a great thing, a great balance that you're providing with your wife, also sharing the platform, because obviously that's my principle in action, right, in activity. Another question, if I could just keep you there for a moment, is in Kemet or Egypt, are the locals as engaged with the legacies and the rights of what's taking place, in those sacred grounds? Do they consider themselves regal or royal, or feel that it's important for the world to know about the importance of that? Are they too bogged down in survival, or bogged down in terrorism or disruption of their daily lives, and they don't have a commitment to it as such as we do, coming from the West or the Western countries, where we go in, we look at it as being sacred sites. So do the locals have a sense of that, or is it because they're so up close that it's not really relevant for them, or doesn't appear to be relevant to them?
I think it's the latter. It essentially, like I was saying before, up until 1800, when I didn't finish what I was saying, when the Western researchers started coming in and looking at the sites and taking things back to museums and realizing how important it is and things of that nature, and when the translation was done and all that, and when the country was taken over by the British and the French, and they started protecting the sites. Otherwise, they were being blown up, demolished, and dismantled, by the people living there.
Desecrated as well. Desecrated. Continue on that line, because I know that when you're coming here, speaking to the Egyptian mysteries of the cosmic mind, kinetic teachings of Lord Yogi, that's really taking it to another level as well. Talking about now the scribes, right, and how the scribes are working within the context of the mysteries of Kemet as well, right?
Well, yeah. The people there, they really do not see ancient Kemet. They try to, the people that I've talked to in Egypt presently, the Arabs who follow Islam, who live there, they would like to claim the ancient Egyptian cultural legacy, but they really don't want to have anything to do with the religion. And in fact, in the Quran and as it is in the Bible, it talks about polytheists, and they're kind of the worst group of any that are hated by Orthodox religion. They're seen as the worst, and because we have many gods and goddesses, and so we're referred to as polytheists. But the ancient Egyptians did not practice polytheism; they practiced henotheism, which means that you have a supreme being and you have powers that emanate from that supreme being that are called gods and goddesses. So in Christianity, they call them saints or angels. So in ancient Egypt, they called them gods and goddesses. Although I'm not comparing or saying that the Christian version or context is the same. I'm just giving like a kind of analogy. So the people there currently really do not respect or see, and the impression I get is that it did not exist, that it was not there. Except that the authorities, they know that it's a money producer, and so they want to have it, although they really do not maintain it as well as they could. And we tried to actually do some assistance in that while we were there last time, doing some cleanup and doing some donation to try to clean up the panels and things of that nature. So, but that's I think that's kind of the state of things. But people there are not like every minute. They're not looking over their shoulder, to see if there's a bomb coming or somebody should. They're living their lives like here, and then every once in a while an attack occurs or something occurs, and then that's kind of how things are. So it's not like a war zone like in Syria or Iraq or something like that. And we would not go into that kind of situation either.
And thank you for that, because I think that it's really good to know that some of the stereotypes again, and of course, support there, once painted as being a war-torn country and is full of ISIS insurgents and things are happening there that makes it very dangerous, very much threatening to be a part of that environment. Let me ask you, Dr. Ashby, you've been traveling and making these structures for some time, and there's a sense that our connection to ancient Kemet, and we know that Egypt, of course, is one of many African states or countries, and we have a variety of different things, 152 countries that we can point to as part of the continent of Africa. How do we make the connection to us here, going there, and then adopting or even returning to it, if it's even traceable in DNA-wise, genetically, those factors there, the spiritual factors of Kemet, and how do we make the connection directly from our DNA here to our DNA there, as opposed to other places like Ghana or places where they have arrived from or originated from? How do we make that connection? How do you make your connection to ancient Kemet or ancient being one of the primary places that we stem from?
Okay, about the connection. But before I get into that, could I ask if it's okay if Dja, my partner, because since we talked about the upcoming possible trip and her impressions, because she assisted with the program as well, can she say a few words?
Yeah, absolutely. I know she said the rest. I know she was bringing up she had fine now. She's able to. How are you, Dja?
Uja, greetings. I keep hearing my name coming up, so I thought it would be polite to say it. It would be polite to say it's up. Uh,
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being there. He wants you to share also. So, do you have some of your own sharing around the trips and across overall? What would be your depiction of what we're dealing with and what it is that you and your husband or king man is uncovering in on your journey there?
well, the trips have been like I think the students, the aspirants, the attendees who have gone, have found them pretty amazing, and I would concur with that myself. I always say like what I say about things is not because I'm affiliated with our temple or with Dr. Ashby, but as a observer and having awareness of different groups, organizations in the Kemetic and the Indian tradition, and just observing what it is that he does, that we do. It's a very like a very, I guess, as he used the word, initiatic level of philosophy and teachings, and I think it's life-changing and transformational. And our trips, when we do them, we do, like, they're vegan. We arrange them. He mentioned our organizer that we have there in Kemet, that who's very good, who's been working with us for these years. So we arrange them there. We have some special association with, especially in Abydos, the temple there, special relationships that through our organizer that we've engendered. So we're able to get access to the temple in a way that allows the teaching to be for us to study the teaching very in depth. It's like we spent like about each time we spent about 5 or 6 days. So this time we spent about 6 days, and Dr. Ashby has discovered like a flow to the temple, especially there. That's where we spend a lot of our time, and a flow to the temple that basically takes one from the coming into the teachings. Like, so when you enter the courtyard of the temple, you're coming into the teachings, which is like Mat is the first aspect of that. And then as you enter actually the temple facade, you offer Mat. You have to be like offering Mat to the divinity before you can enter the temple. So, and then when you enter, then there's the spiritual birth, and then there's as we call it, like a reset, actually, like recreating your physical being, your spiritual physical being. And then as you go through, then there's the spiritual birth, and then there's the enlightenment. So he's discovered like a flow to the temple. So the whole program there like starts with coming in as a neophyte initiate, and then moving all the way through the temple to the point of attaining like spiritual enlightenment. So you get the this whole flow. So it's very spiritually evolving and building. And so the students who attend there, they get this very, very very in-depth program, but also very comprehensive. And it's interactive, when he's lecturing or reading the glyphs, actually literally reading the glyphs on the wall. So it's not like his impression of what they are, it's actually reading what the teachings are themselves. And this time I had the opportunity to do one panel, which was nice as I become more aware of, as I learn more about the glyphs. So it's very enriching, and it's spiritually transforming. And then in the evenings, again, like the gentleman that we have that arranges the tours facilitates us to be able to have meet-in space at the hotel where we stay, which the hotel in Abydos is amazing. It's like an art museum in of itself, filled with Kemetic images. So we were able to have a special area in there that we have a meeting room. And so every evening we also go to there. And then Dr. Ashby and I he would go over the teachings, and then we do question and answers in the evening as well. And we have devotional music. Our students lead spiritual worship programs for that. It's optional, but for anyone who wants to attend the worship programs. We have the Jeff Neteru, so our uncle's there. Yeah, we have group programs.
Yoga postures.
The yoga posture. So it's a very integral, comprehensive program that works with every aspect of the personality. So I think what is lacking, probably, if I would say something's lacking, is like having a week after before we come back to the US of A to decompress and prepare for coming back into this, because leaving that and coming back into this, it's a little bit of a culture shock. And as far as safety when we're there, it's generally, we take special precaution. Like in 2016, I think we actually didn't do a program in Cairo. And now some people, I think some of the people who had gone for the first time, that might have been a little disappointing that they didn't get to go to the pyramid. So this year we added that back in. But we generally try to stay away from spending a lot of time in Cairo because of safety issues. And the city where we are in Abydos, it's very safe and very small community. They welcome us, and then also they usually set up a ton of guards outside the hotel. And we were escorted back and forth from the temple. There's a police station right across, so there's guards, so you get used to seeing people with guns, but unlike in the US of A, we don't worry as much about them aiming the guns at us, because they're protecting us. So it's a different feeling. Like you get used to seeing it, but you're not concerned about your safety because you're not going to be the target, if I could say that. The places we choose and how we do the trip, we take safety into account, as but we also have an armed guard with us the whole way on the bus, and then we have protections of all the temples. They are pretty well protected, and I think these days they are very focused on protecting the tourists, as you mentioned earlier, because of everything that's going on there and because of the economy.
Right. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for giving us a balance to the discussion. And I heard you say it's very initiatic, that people are going through through rituals, right, to become like a rite of passage, right? And it seems like everyone is coming into their fullness relative to the spirituality. The work, of course, Dr. Ashby has always been working on the spiritual side of keeping us knowing that there's a certain level of force field that we have to now acclimate ourselves to, so we can really truly get the deeper meanings to the sciences that is our legacy, of course, from our own DNA. I would ask you also, within that context, how does it work for us establishing ourselves? As you say, when you come back here in the culture shock, because you're back into the whole mundane whatever it may be, survival that comes with being in this society that doesn't have the glamour of spirituality that comes with that. We have, of course, our religious buildings and religious institutions here, but when it comes to building something as spiritual as going to ancient Kemet and coming back through that, how would you say that could be practicalized living in these shores versus going there for visitation, because we have to make it practical for utilizing it, given the isms of this particular society we live in. How would you say, and both of y'all can probably chime in on this, how would you say it is essential for us to be able to take that and to make it work for us on these shores, and is that practical? Can it be practicalized in that sense?
Well, I think so I think one of the things that is that, as you know, within this grander culture here in the US of A, one cannot really survive unless one has their own subculture of cultural or spiritual or religious or whatever kind of philosophy that keeps one afloat in this culture, so to speak. I think that's how most people survive in this culture, because the main culture is so it's so unrighteous and it has so many issues that there are many subcultures or pockets. So I think within this culture, at least relative to our organization, we have what we call like a virtual temple. So we don't all live in the same area. We don't all even live in the same US of A. We don't all live in the same hemispheres or, the same continent. So I think having a support network, what we call Canute for opportunities for like good association, for associating with others of like mind, and having that support is a very big aspect of it. So actually we have like a WhatsApp group that we do for the trips, and then it continues afterwards so that we keep posting things. But when we are there also, it's a family environment. Like we don't, once we're there, it becomes like, actually when we're in the hotel, sometimes they'll ask us, are you all related? Because it's just like we're all one big family. And this last time we had children actually, which was really a very nice type of a different and nice aspect to the trip for us. So I think when we are there, and then when we come back here, so there's something, what I like about going there is that oftentimes we're so wrapped up in this culture, but when we go there, it's such a different paradigm. And especially I would say for people of African American descent, although our trips are open to anyone who is spiritually inclined towards the Kemetic tradition. But I would say especially for people of African American descent, when you're in this culture, I think there's always, and I include myself in that, like there's always a kind of an undercurrent awareness that like I'm black, you know, like you don't, like it's hard to forget that aspect of your being, of your personality while you're interacting in this world. There's always that. And so how can you go to being like, I'm a SAR, I am the spirit, if there's always this kind of like a cultural binding that when you're in this culture, you're always like caught up in these like racism and ethnic differentiations are always such a integral and prevalent foundational part of this culture. So when you go into a different area where actually when you're there, I think I always joke that I think you're green when you're there, no matter what the color of your skin is, because it's really about the money when you're there, you know, relative to the people there and the groups and the tour companies. Like, you know, everyone is equal. You're just a tourist. And they want to make sure you have a good time, and they want to make sure that they keep you safe. And so when you're there, you actually are able to shed that layer of like your relationship that you have with this culture, and you're there, and now you're in, and especially if you have a cultural connection to Kemet, you're basically in your element. You're in your true element. And then now if you understand that,
again, that's a great explanation as to what it is that one will be challenged with. And as I asked Dr. Ashby when I didn't know you were there, I was asking him to speak to how do we make the connection, and how do we do that, relative to lineage, or maybe even if we want to see whether or not there is a genetic connection that we can then identify when we do go there. And as you stated, we have a cultural affinity or connection.
And then we also have the spiritual connection, because like when we, at least for our organization, when we are there in the temples, so all the temples, when you go with a regular tour guide, they tell you, oh, this is the king, and this ritual was done, and this is what the king did, and this is what the king did, and this. So we take a different perspective, because the king is we call it the royal personality. And what the king or the queen is depicting in those glyphs and in those reliefs is what, and especially in this temple in Abydos, which is one of the most beautiful temples and one of the most well preserved. So what they're depicting is what they're like showing. Basically, they're an initiate, they're an aspirant, and they're showing you as an aspirant what you need to do. So actually we identify with the royal personality. The royal personality is like what people refer to in spiritual culture as your higher self, that higher aspect of your being. So that's another level of shedding that goes there. So not only you shed kind of like the physical identity that keeps you bound to this Western culture, but then you also shed your spiritual identity that, I'm a spiritual being. I'm a human being having a spiritual experience. When you go there, it's like, no, you're not a human being. You're a spiritual being, and the human aspect of your personality and this experience is a part of that. But your true essence is this royal personality, and these teachings are speaking directly to that royal personality, that higher aspect of yourself, to show you the way of what you need to do to become, to attain what we call nahast, or spiritual enlightenment. So when you come back from that here, I think basically, when you're here trying to become detached from all these things, like there's a proverb that says it's very hard to leave the things that meet your gaze in every side. So all the things we've been conditioned to in this culture, that when you're here trying to detach from it, it's very difficult because you're interfacing with it at every turn. Even your personality is constantly being jarred, and you're constantly reminded you're the body, and you're constantly reminded, things of the body in this culture. And when you come back from there with this higher perspective,
a lot of the issues in terms of maintaining basic food, clothing, and shelter, right?
right. And then when you come back from that, you still have that perspective, but you have a change in perspective, a change in the angle of vision, because now you have connected with something so higher in your personality, so higher in your being, that when you look at like a lot of the lower types of I would say things that give pleasure for the senses, things that in the culture that, maybe you hang out and you do certain things that, because you have nothing better else to do. Now, when you come back and you feel yourself as this royal personality, like almost a para, right? A pharaoh, like you feel like this higher aspect of yourself, because that's what a sar is. And that's what the para represented, Heru or Asar on the throne, and you're identifying with that aspect of your being, and you come back here, you can really see how degraded this culture is. And therefore, in that way, you're able to let go a lot of things that maybe before you were into, or you had a hard time letting go of, because you can see how it's actually a degrading aspect of the personality. And then as far as you said, how do you get supported here? I don't think you can really do it without a group. So I think, as human beings, we have relationships. Our first relationship was with our mother, and that's depicted as Hesed and Heru in Kemet. You can't take a baby and put it somewhere and it's going to survive on its own and thrive on its own and grow on its own. It needs nurturing, it needs care. And so that's the same thing with your spiritual birth. You have to be able to have that nurturing and care and support as well too. So I think that is experience in the trips. We had even some medical issues on the trips with a couple of persons in the trip this time. And our whole group came together. We had some nurses in the group. Myself, I'm a veterinarian and a animal doctor, but the doctor nonetheless. And we everybody pulled together to support anyone going through anything physical on the trip. Like I said, like a big family support, and it's amazing. No one got impatient while we, gave care and attention to help these people so that they could continue to be a part of the group. The children were well cared for and taken care of by everyone in the group. And so that's also, even at our conference that we have coming up, that's, I guess, what I appreciate about it, because we are so scattered around the country and, the world, that we're not able to get together, very often. So when we meet at these conferences that we have there in the Atlanta area, that we're going to start having next Thursday, it's a wonderful, what we call it is Kunum Nefer, good association with the teachings, good association with each other people who are of like mind, and that kind of has what would I say, when you minds come together and pushes to a higher level, when
synchronicity,
a synchronicity, but also
Cape Canaveral.
In other words, if one person is trying to do it in their own, it's a little bit more difficult. When you're other people, the thoughts just become raised to a higher level, and you benefit from other people's thoughts, because somebody's thinking a thought or ask a question, then that answers your question also, or you were having. Maybe you didn't have it as yet, or you were going to have it. So it takes a teachings to a whole level when you have a group of people who are all of the same interests, as well as the community aspect of it, as well as being there with Dr. Ashby, who is a lot of the teachings he gives direct translations from the scriptures. He's doing that method of translation now called trilinear translation method, which he gives the direct. Yeah, it's called a trilinear method. So it's basically he reads the glyphs, then he translates the Kemetic letters into English letters, the Kemetic words into English words. And then he gives a contextual, application for here and now in today's world. How do you understand it, and then how do you apply it? So that's so a lot of his teachings these days are coming directly from the scriptures using the hieroglyphs, and then doing the direct translations. And so the glyphs in themselves, being able to look at them and the nuances that they offer give deeper insight into the teaching. So it's very profound. And I just wanted to add, Dr. Ashby's pointed to me that the conference, to give a plug for the conference, it's Thursday, December 28th to Monday, January 1st, and it's going to be at the Calvin Center, which is just like about 20 minutes, I think, outside of Atlanta.
So that's the Calvin Center. For some reason it was so small, I thought it said Calvin. Okay, yeah, I see it now. Calvin Center.
At the Calvin Center.
15550 Wilson Road in Hampton, Georgia, right?
Right, and we have like daily rates if someone can only come for like a day. So their daily rates, you can come for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or all 4 days. You can stay on site. We also have a children's program this year. Again, we've added this is I think our third annual children's program. And then on the last day, on Monday, which is I guess is New Year's Day, I think around 12 o'clock, if anyone in the community would like to come for free, at 12 noon on Monday, and I don't have the schedule, but I think it's 12 noon on Monday, 12 to 2. The community's invited to come out. We have the children's play. The children are going to do a play based on Lord Jehuti. Shems Olapiju and Shems Arit are overseeing the children's program, the children's play, and it's always very, very good and very inspiring to see the young ones coming up through the teachings. And so it's something we enjoy, and so the community would be welcome to come out between 12 to 2 p.m., and there's no charge for that. And it's the conclusion.
Right. So, I thank you for sharing that. And so when we look at overall, it really is hitting ourselves back into, as you said, we're spiritual beings with a human experience that we are actually matriculating through. But there's also this sense within the context of the ancient Kemetic teachings, and it really is an internal rectification of ourselves. Given that we've been here, those of us who've been here, we've been dealing with all the isms that you stated earlier, of course, racism and sexism and militarism and all the isms you can probably think of. But there is a sense that it brings us back fully and connects us back to our ancient cosmic awareness of who we are. And that will support us in whatever we're doing. That could give us a better perspective of how to live and work through it. Is there a diet that you recommend that works with that too? Are you an advocate of any particular consumption that should happen while people are really getting their spiritual stability back?
Right. Well, we have actually, you probably are aware of our book, The Kemetic Diet, Food for Body, Mind, and Soul. So when we talk about diet, we talk about, the wisdom teachings, the meditation, the physical food. Of course, we recommend a vegan diet. And that's also something for our trips that we do maintain as well. So for our trips, we don't have, as Dr. Ashby said, we don't have a lot of people, 50 or 60 people, but really we can't handle that many too. I think but this last one we had about 31, 32 persons. And probably that is like a good amount for us, because then in the temple it becomes too crowded and it'll be more impersonal, in other words. So, but when we are there, we also, no smoking. Smoking is not allowed. No alcohol. When these are what we recommend, and at our conferences also we have everything is about maintaining health for the body, because you need a healthy body for your spiritual journey. So no alcohol, no smoking, and a vegan diet, and so we maintain that also through the trip. So there are some people who wanted to come in the trip, but for either the smoking part or the diet part, they didn't feel that it could do it. So, but that is what we do advocate, and that's what we do recommend. And I think I've heard 2018 is going to be the biggest trend, is going to be the population moving towards veganism. I guess veganism is supposed to be one of the biggest trends for 2018.
Right, and that's not just for consumption habits, but we talk about environmentally becoming more aware. I think Dr. Ashby spoke about, of course, the global warming and the tissues with the environment and how that works in terms of how we create and teach nature or even interact with nature.
Right.
We
I think.
acclimate ourselves to the planet so we can safeguard ourselves on the planet because
Yes.
of all the desecration and deterioration of the planet's resources. That would be something that would help us tremendously because it's sustainable, right?
Yes, and you know when I first, for myself, I'll speak for myself. When I first came into the teachings, like, so we had studied the Indian teachings also, of yoga and spiritual philosophy, and then when I came into the Kemetic spiritual teachings, what I so much appreciated about it, because I love when something is good, it's just good in so many other aspects and areas. And it's such a holistic type of teaching that takes into account, it's not just like about you becoming a spiritual personality, but it has connections to your environment as well. Because the precepts of Mat say, you know, you've not despoiled the water, you've not despoiled the land. So it's a very holistic type of teaching. And, you know, many people say that the ancient Egyptians, that they ate meat, they ate fish. That is true that the general population did eat. I think birds did eat fish. Meat not so much because it wasn't a big thing there. But for the initiates, for the spiritual aspirants, it says specifically in the Purtamaru teachings that you must say, I have not eaten like flesh. I have not eaten animal flesh. So there's a definite, if you want to go in the spiritual path, the teachings themselves from the Purtamaru, the Book of Coming Forth by Day, the Book of Enlightenment, tells you specifically that if you want to gain higher spiritual capacities, connection with your cosmic self, awareness of your true nature, then yes, your physical diet also is important. And actually there was a study, like a scientific study that was done where they fed people meat unknowingly, and they fed them they were vegetarian people, and they fed them like either vegetarian food and then or vegan food, and then they fed them meat kind of disguised as their vegetarian food, and they didn't know it. And then they measured like different stress factors related to anxiety levels and fear and agitation and things like that, without the people knowing. And actually they had higher scores for anxiety, anger, frustration, and while they were eating the meat products. So there's a basis for that, being vegetarian and veganism, that it affects also your mind. So yeah, Dr. Ashby is here also.
The state of the animal when it was slaughtered or when it utilized for the purposes of consumption, the animal was never treated in a way that, you know, could actually support, you know, sometimes we talk about kosher, we talk about halal, or, you know, those things, you know, are just ways of trying to give a different depiction of what it is to consume. Like you said, there was a historical reference point to eating a whole lot of coarse matter. So I think that very much matters as for what we're doing now.
Well, one of the arguments also for this...
There's going to be a Kemetic basis of yoga classes happening, series of lectures, drumming, chanting, children program. And all of this is over the 4-day, is that a 4-day period? Yeah, 4-day period. So is it also an initiating process, or is this a workshop that people will get a chance to really get more acquainted with the values of Egyptian mysteries and cosmic mind Kemetic teachings? Or is it something that is going to be also certificated or maybe initiated or initiatory activities?
I was going to say also, if anyone is interested also, they can just go to our website, which is www.egyptianyoga.com, and there's a handout that will pop up there and give them information if they're interested in contact information. So they can just go to egyptianyoga.com.
Again, the website is egyptianyoga.com, right?
Correct. One other thing I was going to say about the...
local number here,
right.
770-880-8527 and 770-880-8527, and also there's some other numbers on here as well, 954-599-3850 or 3 I'll give them again before we let y'all go very shortly.
And let me let Dr. Ashby to get back in to answer to answer the question that you just asked. Also, let me have him come back in.
Right. Come on back up. Well, thank you, Dja. We appreciate you for coming through and sharing with us. Thank you so much.
Okay. Also, if I can put in one more plug that I will actually be working with Asar Onk in our group and so also Uabsetna to do a program there in June on the Jeff Netru, the exercise and the serpent power. I don't know what the location is yet, but it'll be in June in Atlanta. But probably something will be up on our website. And it'll be like a weekend workshop also. So anyway, I think it'll be in, because I think I'm doing one in Florida in May. That's how, and then in June. I haven't gotten the dates down, but I think
okay. Well, then
I think it'll be like,
yeah. So we can have people know about it. How about that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sister. All right.
Uja, I'm here.
Okay, so thank you for
certificate.
diligent about making sure that the Queen got a chance to express and give us that perspective. It was very much well-rounded, and also gave us a little more. In closing, I know we have that's a short time to keep you too long, but I wanted to also have you and I hope you just indulge me a little bit because I know that talk about our connection. I want to make sure that a lot of times we're so disjointed and disconnected from the sciences that are really truly of our own heritage, and sometimes, like I said, we can't draw the connection in the parallel. And I was asking earlier about whether or not we can see ourselves directly connected to Kemet, and is there a way that because we know we have many tribes and there's a lot of tribalisms. When it comes to us being from Africa as a continent, as a country, because obviously it's a continent with more than 52 countries and different practices, cultural practices, and different activities that happen relative to initiations. How does one make the connection within the context of Kemet, and how do we make that bloodline connection if there is one? And does it matter? Does it matter that we would know if we have a direct connection, that we would have an affinity? Or does that explain where maybe some of us don't even find ourselves drawn to it because of that?
Okay, that's a very interesting and important question, I would say. I will start by saying that the connection is twofold. One, we can say that is genetic, physical, and one that we can say is psychic or spiritual. And from the physical side, we can say that, and I talked about this in Egyptian Yoga Volume 1 and in African Origins Volume 1, two of our books, that it's been demonstrated that the ancient Egyptians had a connection with people in West Africa, everywhere from and going further south into Nigeria and into to the west, Senegal, and with the Dogon and all that kind of thing. So what if we want to look at it in that way, then it means that those people who were captured and made into slaves, they had a direct connection to Kemet, which means that they were brought over to the Western Hemisphere. So you see where I'm going with that one. The other aspect is the spiritual, and it does not require a genetic connection, because part of the African religion, which even the early Egyptologists in the 19th century recognized that ancient Egyptian religion is actually an African religion. It has correlations with other traditions, like especially the Assyrian, issues of burial, issues of reincarnation, issues of, and we can go to many different things, but just to say that even they recognized that the language is connected to other African languages. Even they recognized the spiritual shall we say, panorama of what we might call, quote unquote, African religion. That ancient Egyptian religion, the Shaitan Neter, was part of that. And how I have come to see it after, decades of researches and philosophical reflections on it and teaching and things like that, is that the ancient Egyptian religion is the highest expression of African religion. And I make that statement understanding that many people have different affinities and like you were saying, they have different interests and people have different levels of capacity. But for me, that's how I would see it. For those who like Akan or who like Yoruba or anything else, that's fine and wonderful. Just like for anybody who likes Hinduism or anything else. But if they're coming to study what I work on and my perspective, to me that is the connection. And it is not just something historical. We've demonstrated that it's something alive if it is understood, and through various different means, like comparative religious studies, and wrote a book on comparative religion and mythology, through linguistic studies. And we also have another book, the subject I was just mentioning, as you said, that called Matrix of African Proverbs, where we show the connection between the African proverbs and the concept of Ubuntu and the concept of Ma'at. So there are many correlations, but the idea is that what you're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, or what I think people should try to do, is not just study these things as historical or cultural curiosity so they can amass a bunch of knowledge and say, oh, this is connected to this, this is connected to that. The purpose is to attain enlightenment, because life is short, and it's not going to do you any good in the grave to have lots of knowledge and information. So what you're trying to do is to collect that information that is useful towards the purpose of enlightenment, which is the purpose of every ancient Egyptian temple, and pretty much not all, but high quantity of the texts were related to that issue, and the whole society was geared towards that. That to me, that is an example of society that worked. So Dja mentioned that even in the Peru texts, the principles of Ma'at that are enumerated, and we did last year's conference was all about Ma'at, that it demonstrates that the reason why Kemet was able to last for so long, for thousands and thousands of years, as opposed to modern culture, Western culture, and we will not call it civilization because it's not civilization. It is barbarism, what is leading to the destruction of the biosphere. And what I'm getting at is that the ancient Egyptians recognized, just like other native cultures, like Native American and other cultures, indigenous cultures, that we are connected to the biosphere. We're connected to the land. Actually, the land is a cosmic force, a god, called Geb. And if we do not live in harmony with them, they will teach us a lesson. That is what the scriptures talk about, going even into the Hermetic period, where the human beings have despoiled and disrespected, and so then a destructive force is sent to deal with them. In one myth, it's the goddess Sekhmet, who turns into a destructive destructive lioness, but really she is a cosmic force of retribution. And in another one, the texts talk about how human beings have forgotten or they have become arrogant. They had spoiling the land, and eventually they will be dealt with by the same cosmic forces that they are mistreating, that they are. And so basically that's how Ma'at works. It's a kind of reciprocal issue. So, but on the other side, if you do what is prescribed, those same cosmic forces are your friend, and they take care of you, and they uplift you spiritually. And so that was, we were talking about before, how it's difficult to do that from within a culture that, she calls it, she has a term that she uses called a mystical. And that, to be what has happened is much more profound. I think what is happening and is accelerating is that the culture itself is disintegrating because the individuals themselves are spiritually bankrupt. They have smartphones instead of true caring and knowledge about themselves, so they can't care about other people. They can't care about nature. It's kind of like a vacuous kind of living where you have a person who is hollow. And this has been by design in a way, by the powers that be, but it's as a kind of instrument of rule, but it's actually backfiring because it's actually promoting the self-destruction that even the power elite are going to be caught up in too. They don't think so, but they will. But anyway, leaving that aside for now, there's a whole other topic. The current conference is it's kind of been the last 10 years. The conferences have been having special themes and connected themes. And last year we did Ma'at, and the partner of Ma'at is Jehuti, and Jehuti is cosmic mind. So all this year we're going to be dealing with a philosophy of cosmic mind from the Perlam Haru, and we're going to be discussing the Perlam Haru text and the translations of the original hieroglyphs and the philosophy, which is so wonderfully high. I put this as now that it's coming out and it's being understood, is as high as any other philosophy of the world, or like Buddhism, Vedanta philosophy. I put it on Taoism. I put it on all those kinds of levels, and so this conference is dedicated to the in-depth study and practice of that cosmic wisdom, and it's meant to be a very packed program that is dedicated to be studied, and in my view, especially in the last 10 years, the conferences have been in such that they really should be studied for the whole year after they're given, and before, in anticipation of getting the next, so that's what we are currently working on. So, and people it's going to be given in a series of lectures, and they're all connected. They have different sections, but they're all connected, and people can come in and join. Coming in, some people may want to come for the whole thing, some for the day, and it'll be made available at some point next year online, and in our Kemet television site. It'll be also maybe incorporated into the Kemet University as a course, but also it'll hopefully be published as a book in the early part of the first quarter of next year as well.
Well, I want to thank you, of course, personally for all your work, and your work has been very, very influential and instrumental in helping support us in getting reacclimated or reconnected to Kemet. And I would ask you in closing whether or not you feel that your work has done to particularly when you talk about barbarism. I like the way you say that it's not civilization, but it's barbarism. Would you say that your work it is intentionally anecdotal to that, and can we sustain ourselves within the context of what's happening now in Babylon, as we see the emperors unclothed, butt naked, if you will, or buck naked, as they call it, and what we see all this chicanery happening now, that has been somewhat sped up exponentially to show us exactly that there is a collapse happening, right? There is a dismantling happening right before our very eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Say, agree with that, and then you work anecdotal to that.
Yeah, I hesitate to answer because that's a whole other genre of my work. I did a presentation at last year's conference, and I did another presentation in June on the issue of climate change and global warming and the collapse of the biosphere that is coming, and that is going to lead to a political and social economic collapse as well. But yes, as you say, the emperor is not only unclothed, but he's buck naked. I like that one, and that's one of the benefits of having this person who may be referred to as a psychologically challenged individual. Let's put it that way, and although others have been as well.
But that's indicative of the culture, right? Indicative of Babylon.
Right. Right, it's indicative of the degradation, and we thought, right, we thought that Clinton was, or that Reagan was nuts, and we'd like to have Reagan back now, even more than Bush the II or Obama or all these other people, Clintons. I think we'd like to go back to that, or Carter or something like that. But really, the whole system is corrupt. It has been corrupt from the beginning. It never was not corrupt. It was always designed as a system of power for the power elite. It always was, and that it was designed to protect and to fool people into thinking that they have democracy. There was never any democracy. This is always a republic where you have to go through the power elite for any redress of any issue. Actually, true democracy occurred in Botswana at one time, and then in Libya, and those were destroyed basically by the power elite, essentially. So what this culture has is actually a pathology, and the pathology has led to a fever pitch with the greed and with the misogyny and everything else that is leading to from a Martin perspective. Now what I'm saying now is from Martin perspective is a reciprocation of self-destruction, because that is what people are doing. They're not acting in a way that is self-sustaining and righteous and true. And so the result of that, the result of and this is the scripture that talks about this, in the Martin scripture we talked about last year, it talks about Heru, who has two heads, Horus, and when he has two heads, when one of his heads is Set and one of his heads is Heru, it actually he's referred to as Apep, and Apep is the divinity that relates to entropy. He relates to a breakdown, and so you cannot have a person who is essentially with a split consciousness, where part of your personality you are good, and sometimes you're bad, and then sometimes the bad takes over, and that's what we call when Set kills Asar. When the ego kills the soul or chops it up into pieces, and if that occurs, you have a disintegrated personality. You cannot have ethics, you cannot have truth, and therefore you cannot enter into the Hall of Ma'at and pass the test of righteousness, of moral purity, and therefore you're not allowed to go into the inner shrine of Asar to see your higher self. And so what we have now is that Set has been ruling, and but Set is not even in the ancient Egyptian scriptures. this is like beyond Set. This is like a pathology, because Set is not an evil character. He's just a misguided personality due to following error. So in ancient Egyptian, we do not recognize evil as such. It's a pathology, a kind of a sickness, a kind of aberration of the personality, and we have because we don't have wise guides. We don't have Tahotep. We don't have Imhotep. We don't have people like that for society to look to, or they are there, but they don't look to them. And so people want to eat meat. People want to live lifestyles of the rich and famous, or a hip hop gangsterism or whatever. Right. So that degrades the mind further. So you have more pathology, more self-destruction. And then we want God to come and save us. Well, God is not going to come and save you, because you should have done the saving with what God gave you, which is an intellect, which is Jehuti, and right, and Ma'at. That's what I was going to say next. And Ma'at has been given the rules for self-preservation and for health, but you don't want to follow it. But you want to go pray later to God and come and save me, and I'll change my ways. And it doesn't work like that. And so that's what we need to learn. That.
Operating from free will, but we're putting ourselves in a position where that free will is not disciplined, right?
Right. See, because we have free will, because we are gods and goddesses ourselves. And so you cannot, if you are God, and that's what the scripture says, if you are a divinity, you have the power. But if you fall into ignorance and you think you do not have the power, then you be praying to something, or to asking a president to come and help you, or and then you live a degraded life. And since you are essentially the divinity who has fallen into ignorance, you have the power over your life to make choices, and that's what people refer to as free will. Because if that was not the case, then it means that you are trapped forever, which is not true. It's not the case. But people have to come to think about these things correctly. Otherwise, they won't work. If you think you have to go to a secret, or to go to Hollywood, or to some special thing to relieve you or to save you, that is a part of the error that churches want to keep you in, or to Orthodox religion, so you can be bound and perpetually enslaved. And the Egyptian mysteries are about not just freedom, but of personal and universal sovereignty. And if you discover the mystery of yourself, you are going to discover the ultimate dominion over your existence, which is you. And that, of course, also is Asar. And that's what we're coming to learn. That's what we've been teaching, all the times, and trying to perfect that deliverance of that teaching, and so on and so forth.
Well, I say, Baba, we appreciate that, and appreciate, of course, you and Dja for coming through. And it's going to be the Egyptian mysteries of the cosmic mind, Kemetic teachings of Lord Jehuti. Of course, it's in association with the Temple of Miami, and of course, the Temple of Haru, Atlanta, and that's coming up on the Thursday, 28th of this particular month, through Monday, the 1st of January. And the program will include, as it was stated earlier, of course, vegan meals, and also 80% 20 raw cooking, and also Kemetic-based system of yoga postures, series of lectures, drummings, and chanting children's program. Again, for more information, the numbers are, we say like that. We have 954-599-3850, 340-514-5463. Local number is 770-880-8527. And if you want to go to the website, it is EgyptianYoga.com. That's Egyptian, EGYPTIAN yoga.com. Get a chance to sit with the masters coming forth to our city. Again, that's Dr. Muata Ashby and Dja coming in to from the Neterian Chapter, coming in to share with us here in Atlanta. Baba, I want to thank you again for your work, for your love, for your consistency, and for your commitment to our liberation.
Thank you for the opportunity. Over the years, your support as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we look forward to you coming to the city, and of course, safe travels on your way in.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right, hit the tune. Blind Watch on 89.3 FM, wrfg, Atlanta.
WhatsApp message from 2017 KMT Trip Group, Karen Private Comms.